Hey, and welcome to Darker Days Radio, episode number 43. I'm, of course, your host, Mike, and tonight, joining me, I've got Ian Watson. How's it going, Ian?
I am pretty good, thanks. How are you?
Pretty good. You're going to be damn awesome after this episode. And we've also got Peter Marshall. How's it going, Peter?
I'm well. How are you?
Oh, I'm pretty good. Thanks for asking. So, as you may notice right now, we don't have Chris. That's because he's on holiday. His birthday was yesterday. Happy birthday, Chris.
Happy birthday, Chris.
Happy birthday, Chris.
And this is a very special birthday episode for you. You've been putting in so much effort into the podcast that I decided, like, hey, while you're out of town, why not have a special treat for you when you come back?
Why not have all the fun without you?
Damn straight.
Well, it's also the fact that we can never have an Australian on the show when Chris is here without someone staying up until like 4 a.m. So that's also the other reason why we're doing this. Good.
Yeah,
so I guess we should do some introductions right now. Just kind of ask both of you for your kind of geek cred before we move on to other parts of the episode. So, Ian, how'd you get your start with gaming?
Oh, geez. You're asking me to go way back. I was 12, 13, got into AD&D 2nd Edition. A friend of mine at school, I eventually fell in with Planescape, and from there found Vampire and the rest of the World of Darkness. So that's about 6 or 7 years worth of story you just got there.
Well, you summarized it real quick. Which is your favorite of the World of Darkness games?
Oh, wow. I don't think I could pick a favorite. I probably know most about Mage the Ascension, and then after that, Vampire the Masquerade, but I don't think there's any of them that I've found that I particularly don't like, really.
Very good answer, very good answer. So, Peter, how about you?
Well, I started gaming, probably about the age of 8 when my brother decided to fire up the old West End Games Star Wars. And then, sort of carried on from there. I kind of fell in with the wrong crowd who introduced me to Vampire 2nd Ed at around sort of 14, 15. And it's kind of been cranking since then, and it's now 15 odd years later. And here we are. I have a bookshelf full of NWOD. It's a sea of red and green. And yeah, here we go. And a whole bunch of Trinity, whole bunch of Fading Suns. All good stuff. I like what Ian said. I've pretty much never met a World of Darkness game line that I didn't like. It's sort of been a question of, too many game lines, too many products, and not enough time in the day.
Yeah, I gotcha. And you mentioned what we're going to be talking about tonight, which is, of course, Trinity.
Absolutely.
Yep. So we'll get to that a little bit later, but let's move on over to the mailbag segment. So we got a whole bunch of character sheets in the mail, actually, for a Google Hangout game that I ran. I did a quick Vampire the Masquerade one-shot. So that went very well, and hopefully we'll have more such games in the future. So definitely check out our Google Plus community, because that's where I announced the first game, and I'll continue to announce the ones in the future. All right?
Cool, nice one.
Yeah. And we also got a mail from Malleus, who's a longtime friend of the show, and he sent us a cool new electronica song because he liked our Dark Ages material so much. So definitely a good compliment to Adrian, Steve, and Chris as well for the last episode. And, of course, Google Plus is pretty much rocking. We still have the most active Onyx Path, White Wolf community discussion going on. So definitely really happy with that, really proud of it. Ian, do you guys think that you're going to have like an official Onyx Path Google community in the future? Or
I'm not sure, because almost as soon as communities were available, a good dozen RPG communities popped up, including one labeled White Wolf Onyx Path, and there's just so much stuff going on in all of these communities. I don't know what the point would be of us trying to stop that and, institute our own.
The official community, but all right.
No, we have no official community at the moment.
Oh, okay, sure.
Gotcha, yeah. But you do have an official forum on your website.
Yes, we do.
Mm-hmm. Which is going to be a great place to go and discuss the Trinity game line that's going to be started in the future. Yeah. All right, awesome. The last bit of Darker Days kind of news is that the WoDCast episode number 0 is out. It's kind of a proof of concept, I'd say, as opposed to like a full finished product. But we'll put a link in the show notes, and hopefully the actual, true, real episode 1 will be coming out next week. So, I don't know if you guys checked that out, but we didn't really discuss anything new or innovative or interesting. We just kind of
haven't had a chance to watch that, my friend.
Don't worry about it.
Well, to be honest, there's not a lot of information about the MMO available yet, so...
Good stuff. And I think with that, let's move on over to White Wolf News. The Mummy Kickstarter just rocked the house. Okay? Definitely a lot of awesome stretch goals with that, and I'm very happy that I supported it. And the price, when you take into consideration all those like extra PDFs that you get, totally worth it. Totally worth it. Very good deal.
Absolutely. What was the final total in the end there, Mike?
Let me quickly bring that up. $104,831.
Hot damn.
Good thing Ian was more on the ball than I was.
Well, I have a lot of this stuff in my quick links.
Good man, good man. All right, hopefully Hunter's Hunted 2 will be able to come close to that with its epic return of the... it was a 1992 source book, if I remember correctly, written by Bill Bridges.
92 or 93, yeah.
And the other cool thing about this Kickstarter is that 99% of the book's text is actually going to be available for your preview before... It's already available. We'll put a link in the show notes, but you can definitely check it out before you kick in on the Kickstarter.
It is, in fact, available right now. If you head to whitewolfblogs/vampire, there should be a link to the document containing the draft if people would like to see it.
And the other big news is that the Midwinter LARP convention is currently ongoing. And Ian, I saw you put in our show notes some one of the cool things that was just announced. So do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I can go into that right now. This came as a surprise to me because they don't discuss this stuff with us either. By Night Studios has announced they have the license from CCP to produce Mind's Eye Theater products. So people have been asking Onyx Path, what are you going to do about Mind's Eye Theater? And we had to say, we don't have the license. We don't know what's going on with that. That's up to CCP. Well, now CCP has given the license to By Night Studios. By Night Studios is Jason Carl, who wrote a bunch of Mind's Eye Theater books for Laws of the Night, both editions of Laws of the Night, both editions of the Dark Ages setting, so that's The Long Night and Blood and Fire, I think it was called, and a few other supplements. Shane DeFriest he wrote with Jason on Laws of Elysium, and he was the Camarilla fan club director for a while. And I apologize if I'm getting this horribly, horribly wrong, you guys. This is just what I did in like quick few minutes of research. So he was the Camarilla fan club director for a while and then transitioned to White Wolf community director. So anyone who's been to a convention in like the last 5 years, you've probably met Shane. And Rick is Rick Connolly, who was he was the fan club director of the Camarilla/Mind's Eye Society. He might still be, I'm not sure. I'm not a member. But Alyssa Algari, she worked for Machinima. She was a big fan and got pulled along to the Grand Masquerade because she was a big fan. And as a result of that, she got in contact with a lot of people on our side, like Shane. And she's since been more and more involved in the production. So now she's on the inside, and she's super excited. Like, she's got a Bruja tattoo. Her license plate says Bruja. You know, she's a big fan.
Nice.
And she works in social media, so that's what her focus is right now. Also, Bob, who is deputy city attorney, I think, for New Orleans. So he is also a big fan, but he's their lawyer, so he's keeping all of the paperwork intact for them. So those are the minds behind the By Night Society, or studios, who are currently in charge of Mind's Eye Theater.
Bam, wow.
There you have it.
Very good stuff. I don't think there's been anything new for the LARP community with official content since I think that SAS City in the Sand, was it, for Vampire the Retro?
Yes, that was a few years ago. The last major release aside from that was the Awakening rulebook, I think, and that has to go back to 2007 probably.
Yeah, I think that's correct. So it's good to see new stuff coming out for
Definitely
for the LARPers. Another very important piece of news, well, I don't know if it's really important, but it's very interesting, as Dave Brookshaw revealed on RPG.net that while he mentioned that he was redoing the Spirit and Ghost rules for the God Machine Chronicles when he was last on Darker Days Radio, he forgot to mention, conveniently, that he was also working on the Angel rules, which will be tying into Demon the Triple ?
Did he elaborate any on exactly what those angel rules were? As in, are we talking angels as PCs, or we're talking angels as monsters or whatnot?
I think they're probably just going to be more antagonists, similar to how spirits and ghosts currently are in the rules.
Not good.
Yep, and we also have to bring up that the Gentleman Gamer beat us to it again and again. Actually, another again I noticed earlier today. So. He's got an interview with Mark Ryan.Hagen, of course. He's got an interview with C.A. Suleiman regarding Mummy the Curse. And he also has a Wraith game with the eponymous creator of Vampire the Masquerade. So, awesome, good stuff. I'm definitely a big fan of the Gentleman Gamer, and I'll be sure to put some links into the show notes so you can check out his stuff. Any other comments on White Wolf news or anything like that?
Ian, you might be able to tell us this. Do we know when the Hunters Hunted 2 Kickstarter is going to fire up?
It should be soon. There are a lot of moving parts to take into account. Like, something a lot of people don't know is that when we prepare Kickstarter themselves have to approve of it. So while we can say we want to have this up this week, that might not be necessarily feasible. Rich wanted it up this past week, but we couldn't. So it's as far as our end goes, it's ready to go. So we're just sort of waiting for all the pieces to fall into place. So fingers crossed next week.
My wallet cringes in anticipation.
And so it should.
Very good. And with that, let's move on over to the Secret Frequency.
It's under the stairs. I want my mom.
Tonight we explore strange signals discovered over shortwave radio, a rather apt topic for the Secret Frequency. And this Secret Frequency suggestion actually came from David way back in the WGPRN forums. So, in most industrialized nations, all radio broadcasts need to be registered, for example with the FCC in the United States. This ensures that they do not overlap or interfere with each other. Of course, shortwave radio enthusiasts have actually found and documented many unregistered signals, discovering pirate broadcasts, covert number stations, and radio anomalies. Radio enthusiasts in the United Kingdom have been documenting a number of odd signals originating in Russia. The first one of note is UVB 76, and it appears to be a broadcast from a transmitter in Povario, Russia. Here, let's have a listen.
Михаил, Дмитрий, Женя, Борис. Михаил, Дмитрий, Женя, Борис. 85, 343. Константин, Роман, Иван, Николай, Ульяна, Михаил. 01, 48, 04, 95.
Rumor has it that this is actually a communications hub for the Moscow military district, but surely the Russian military wouldn't keep broadcasting if even amateurs in the UK could listen in. Receivers set to this frequency almost always pick up the buzzer noise, but sometimes there's actually voices and data that can be picked up as well as heard. So the next signal, of course, it has an Enigma designation of S32. It's another Russian signal called the Squeaky Wheel. Much less is known about this signal, but it has frequency which is typically 3828 kilohertz by night, but it actually changes to 5,473 kilohertz in the day. Another signal marker is the PIP, which has an Enigma designation of S30, and it originates apparently from the Rostov-Volgograd area. So this signal is actually notable because it cannot be clearly received anywhere in the world. There's always some kind of a background noise that can be caused by intermediate obstacles, conflicting radio traffic, or perhaps jamming. However, most modern radio jamming actually occurs in the Middle East, so what is Russia trying to hide? And that brings us nicely to the world of darkness. Shortwave radio is a useful tool for supernatural creatures. Even in the digital age, we know that espionage and covert operations use radio extensively. So we have to assume that vampires especially would want to do the same. So in a global conspiracy, like that of Vampire the Masquerade, stuff like number stations, transmitters, and signals from which spies can report in through code, they're pretty crucial to the actions of Archons, for example, communicating whilst they're in Sabbat territory. Hunters as well, from any variety of hunter brands, they're going to find radio quite useful in regions without reliable cell phone service. Africa especially, it's known that radio and SMS, like text messaging, are a much better communication choice, much more reliable. These radio oddities could also be perhaps a Promethean trying to communicate with the outside world, while segregating himself in his wasteland effect. So, for example, that PIP, in particular, seems to be a good one. What if the creators disquiet garbles the radio signal? And of course, radio does not need to come from the mortal realm. It's possible that we could have radio signals leaking in from someplace across the gauntlet, or perhaps the Changeling's Hedge. There's also, of course, been a lot of movies and books which mention signals coming in from the lands of the dead, which is another option for your game. So we're joined by two distinguished guests tonight. So Ian and Peter, what do you think? How could you use these radio signals in your game?
Well, we have Orpheus, which in the form of Radio Free Death already has a literal radio signal from the other side. Radio Free Death broadcasts every night at midnight and can often be heard only by those who are touched by death, either through the use of pigment or if they're one of Orpheus' group's projectors. Perhaps this signal is some sort of emergency signal from Radio Free Death trying to get out. Perhaps it's someone trying to interfere with Radio Free Death. Perhaps in Werewolf the Apocalypse, this could be a broadcast from the Weaver or one of the Weaver's servants, either as a form of remote control over other servants, broadcasting instructions perhaps, or even a method of subtly brainwashing humans by creating a sub-carrier wave on a standard radio broadcast. So you're listening to music while this sub-carrier is affecting you. It could be a New World Order plot to indoctrinate for many of the same reasons, same functionality, or perhaps it's a signal from Autochthonia, the Iteration X machine realm, which is being corrupted by the Avatar Storm. And from the machine god, we move to the god machine of the New World of Darkness, which historically communicates through radio carrier waves. What is it trying to say? Who is it trying to contact?
Indeed, yes. I was thinking quite a bit about the God Machine Chronicles and also the technostic espionage, which is going to be coming out with Demon the Triple Question Mark. So that's definitely something I could tie into if we only knew more about it. Peter, you got any ideas?
Well, this sort of I had plenty of ideas, and Ian basically covered all of them. But What I like about, if we're going to talk about how you would actually use that in your game, what I think it's a really good honeypot, if you know what I mean. It's this mysterious signal which is being broadcast, and so the player characters will, of course, be off to investigate. And you can link that into both classic and both classic and new World of Darkness. You've got, I think, the most easiest link there would, of course, be into Hunter. So you've got the messengers may link into that particular signal. So go and investigate what's going on here. Who's up to, somebody's up to no good. And I think it links really, really, really well with the God Machine. Because you've got, the Apollo astronauts went and brought something back. And did that wake something up that was dormant in Russia? Do the Russians have access to some fragment or some element of the God Machine? So that could work quite well.
Indeed, another option is that you simply have to think about why these signals keep going on. Why isn't they just haven't been turned off if they're kind of gunking up the airwaves? Perhaps the Russians can't for some reason, which is a great place for characters to come in and try to solve something, whether it be in a World of Darkness game or maybe an Aberrant game. Yep. And that's just about it for the secret frequency. So with that, let's move on over to our main segment, a topic of highbrow storytelling, checking out the Trinity Universe.
Topics of highbrow storytelling.
All right, guys. So I don't really know that much about the Trinity Universe, so I'm going to leave it to our two esteemed guests tonight to kind of discuss how the game originated, how it developed, and what kind of cool things there are about the setting, splats, and powers as well. With that, I'll just pass it off to you two.
Did you want to get started with Exile?
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about Exile. So Mike, have you heard of Exile before?
I have. It was this game that Mark Ryan.Hagen was working on just before he left White Wolf.
It was, yeah. There are some, I think at best there was maybe 2 or 3 playtest documents that were out in the wild. I know there's PDFs. I think they exist. So originally there was going to be Exile, which was Mark Ryan.Hagen's sci-fi game. And then he left White Wolf, taking the rights to Exile with him. I think it was then folded into a game that he produced, which I, to the best of my knowledge, was a tabletop miniature game, or sort of a tabletop action figure game, which I think then sort of folded quite quickly.
Yep. I believe ZG or ZG Miniatures, it was sort of a collectible miniatures game that was set in the Exile universe.
Yeah. To the best of my knowledge, then White Wolf sort of had a fair amount of time and resources allocated towards doing a sci-fi game, but then the sci-fi game which they intended to do, of course, disappeared. So the question was then, well, we need to come up with a sci-fi game. And I think thus the Trinity Continuum was born in its original form, which was Aeon.
That's right.
Yep.
At that point, there had been advertisements in various trade magazines and backs of books saying something like, in 1997, White Wolf takes you to the stars. So nothing definitive, but now they had to follow through.
Yeah, absolutely.
So at that point, Aeon was first released, which the name was quickly changed to Trinity for legal reasons. The concept of the game is it's 2120. It's been about 60 years since the end of a devastating war with superhumans who absolutely destroyed the world just about. And they left under threat, and they have now decided to return. They're barely recognizable as humans anymore. They're called Aberrants. They're horribly mutated, incredibly powerful, and the only people who can stand up against them are Scions. There are 8 different Psi orders who have a Prometheus chamber. If you have someone who has latent Psi abilities, you can dunk them in a Prometheus chamber and they'll come out as one of the 8 varieties of Scion. So they can wield their psionic powers like cryokinesis, or they can like shape change their own bodies, or they can shoot fire. They can control electricity. You can shoot lasers out of your fingers. You can heal. You can do all the standard psionic powers. You can work out.
Interesting. One curious aspect about the Trinity Universe is that it kind of goes backwards. It starts off with the grand sci-fi setting at first, and then you get to learn more about the history as the game lines go back. So when you guys first picked up Trinity, how'd you kind of feel about the setting, and were you really curious about what happened before, and was there enough detail to whet your appetite, or did you really like have to check out those other games when they came out?
Well, the front of Trinity had a timeline section in it, which sort of gave a rough indication that the Aberrants might not have been exactly what they seemed, that they might have once been Earth's heroes, which was really interesting, but they didn't actually touch on that at all. The back of the Trinity core book said Aberrant coming in 1999, and most people thought that would be sort of a supplement to Trinity, when in fact it was a full game line in and of itself. So having that come out and reading through it and seeing how completely different it was to Trinity was really interesting.
Yeah, that was a shock to me. I remember at the time I was thinking, oh, cool, you get to play the Aberrants. You know, you're these sort of crazy mutants from beyond the stars. And then it comes out, and it's a prequel game, and you're playing superheroes.
You're playing people with superpowers.
Well,
Superhero,
okay, all right.
Superhero is a registered trademark of Marvel and DC.
Yes, thank you. And yeah, I mean, we'll swing it back, talk a little bit more about Trinity, but you're playing beings with superpowers. How's that sound? As opposed to the sort of superheroes, and yeah, it's it's then about what then happens that you've now got people who can do all these amazing things. How did that directly affect the world? They didn't just sort of spend their time beating each other up and sort of maintaining the current status quo. They got their hands dirty and changed the world. The game is then about what how the rest of us try and keep up, how the rest of us try and respond to those changes. And I mean, the ultimate question, which you already know from Trinity, is ultimately not good. It's and so Aberrant is about this sort of golden age of 10, 20, 30 years after the Aberrants have first manifested, when things are great. They're cleaning up industrial accidents. They're terraforming Ethiopia, so it's now the most fertile ground in the land. But then over time, things slowly start happening, and you end up with the war.
And then finally, just to kind of complete the Trinity and just kind of give a broad overview of the three games, what exactly is Adventure!
Adventure is a fantastic game of pulp action set in the 1920s. You've got nothing but your own two fists, tales of daring do. I love the way the system is set up, because right out of the gate, as a starting character, you can literally be the best person in the world at something. So you can be the world's best sharpshooter. You can be like the man of iron, not like Iron Man, but the big beefy guy that it seems bullets bounce off of you. You just shrug everything off. You're in a plane crash and everyone thinks you're dead, but then 2 weeks later you come back smoking.
And so how does Adventure tie into the rest of the Trinity universe?
Adventure gets its start when a Sir Dr. Calvin Hammersmith invites a few select individuals to witness a fantastic new engine he's created, which draws energy out of nothing, out of the universe itself, the fabric of space-time, and he turns it on and it explodes. And so various individuals around the world sort of get imbued with what they call Z-rays. Some of them become mesmerists, which are essentially a precursor to Trinity's scions. Some of them become stalwarts, which are a precursor to the later Novas and Aberrants. And the last ones become daredevils, which are sort of more your Indiana Jones type, who have every appearance of just being particularly skilled or lucky, rather than having any obvious powers.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah, I find the Trinity concept kind of mirrors how comic books went. You know, they started out with that pulpy kind of action, and then you moved on to the superhero, and then finally kind of moved those superheroes into space, which you can see with like, you can see that kind of progression with like Marvel and DC as they started to come out with these superheroes like the Green Lantern, or they had the Secret Wars in Marvel and that kind of thing. So I've always found that a little curious, and I was kind of wondering if maybe you two saw something similar, or am I just completely way off?
Sort of. I would look at it the other way around, because modern superheroes have their origins with a lot of Victorian and pulp characters. So the Hulk was directly from Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, for example. So many of the standard popular, like Batman, he comes from the Shadow. So many superheroes have their origin in Victorian literature or pulp fiction from the era. So we're sort of not so much exploring superheroes, but exploring more pulp, I guess, if you will, because Trinity is less science fiction and more space opera. So more like the best of Star Trek, when they're not talking about like, okay, how many, like, reconfigure the Heisenberg compensator to reroute power through the EPS. None of that. Like, we have a ship, how do we solve this problem? Like, oh, there's an alien pretending to be a god, what does this mean? You know, all of those great stories that are about people and about things.
Yeah, I gotcha. So the evolution of the pulp character. Yeah, I definitely concur with that. That's pretty cool. Good. So I guess that covers kind of just like the overall concept of the Trinity universe as it was originally presented. Would you two like to kind of talk about, starting with Trinity / Eon, just like the setting and like what kind of characters you're going to be playing, just to give a bit more detail for people that might not be as familiar with them?
I've been talking for a few minutes. I'll pass this one over to Peter.
Okay, sure. Well, I suppose the easiest, the phrase which I sort of came up with for, you know, selling people initially on Trinity is it's Mass Effect the RPG long before we had Mass Effect. So you've got sort of, you know, that space, you can have that space hopping sort of soldiers running around with the sort of slightly fantastical powers that you could have in the Mass Effect game.
Right, exactly. Mass Effect biotics, their psi abilities.
Mm.
Like, if I was going to pick any RPG to play Mass Effect with, it would be Trinity, because it just, concept-wise, it just works so well.
Yeah, I'd put Trinity down for probably about 8 or 9 years, and I think I just finished Mass Effect 2, and I was thinking, God, this would be a great role-playing game. And then I sort of tweaked, hang on a second, it already is, and it's got its own sort of IP. And then I went, oh, hang on, let's have a look. Oh, wow, let's read through the Trinity books again. And I went, I'd totally forgotten just how great this game was.
I really love it. One of the great things about it is sort of any concept within sort of the science fiction genre is represented in the setting. So if you want your sort of Mad Max adventures through like almost a post-apocalyptic wasteland that Europe has been utterly destroyed and is only just starting to rebuild. If you want glorious arcologies in a fascist utopia, you know, that's the Federated States of America, which it gets like almost like Shadowrun, that sort of cyberpunky sort of feel to it. Then you have places like Australia. Australia is almost like the new USA. Like it's where all the immigrants go. It's where like society really works. It's like the new bastion of freedom for the world. Then you have Olympus Station on Luna, which is, you know, there's your space station adventures. Then you can hop on a jump ship and, you know, travel to far-off worlds. So you can do Star Trek or Mass Effect or anything else you want to do. So really, any real science fiction sort of setting you can think of is already represented within Trinity.
Very good. And there's even there's space aliens too, aren't there?
Yes, there are. There are several distinct races. There's the chromatics, who are sort of they're the size of large dogs. They're shaped kind of like frogs. and they communicate using light, which means they can they have the ability to harness photokinesis, so they can shoot lasers in combat if they want from their bodies. Then there's the kin, that's Qin, who they appear to be human, but those are more human suits. They're actually about 2-foot-long slugs that fit inside the bodies and operate them like we would jumping in a mech. Then there's the Coalition, who are sort of mysterious, and they live on one giant generational ship, which is slowly approaching Earth, and there's what appear to be about a dozen different species, but they may all actually be the same species, just sort of specialized to certain tasks.
Very interesting. But those aren't really all that critical to the game. Like, it's very easy for people that want to just focus on humans to focus on them.
No, if you're playing a game on Earth, you don't need to involve them at all.
Yeah. And I guess one of the elements that I always really loved about it, and I think it was I guess as far as to say it was groundbreaking, particularly at the time, was it was specifically not sort of American-centric. It was specifically not sort of the idea that, America becomes this massive sort of, becomes the dominant power in the world and then takes that out to space. You didn't sort of have United Federation of Planets, which was more or less Space America. This was sort of a bunch of different cultures which you often don't see in role-playing games, or it was a bunch of different cultures going off and sort of having their moment to shine, and and America, in this one, sort of, it's become fascist. It's become very isolationist.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you've got you've got Africans, you've got South Americans, whatnot. They're big, huge deals in sort of the global economy. Not that they're not now, but you've got they're now massive centers of technology, massive centers of industry. So I thought that was really, really great.
Yeah, I think the biggest success stories in Trinity are probably Australia, China, and Brazil, which you don't see very often.
Yeah.
Interesting. Peter, it says here that you actually met up with the gentleman that wrote the Australia portion of one of the source books. So could you give some insight about that?
Yeah. I met him briefly. His name's Scott Simo. I met him sort of briefly at a party. It was totally one of those out of the blue things. I just happened to, we mentioned role playing games, and I mentioned I was into them. He was into them. He said, "Yeah, in actual fact, I wrote one." And I was like, "Oh, really? Which?" And he's like, "Oh, the Trinity source book." And I'm like, That's on my wall. That's on my shelf. I've read that. Oh my god! So I had my sort of little fanboy moment, and yeah, we spoke a little bit about it. And apparently, and I think Ian, you can feel free to back this one up if you've heard anything else. Apparently, they had a manuscript which was written by a non-Australian, and oh boy, did it show! It was, I think, the original title for the book was Thunder from Down Under.
I hadn't heard that.
That's what he told me, and so he sort of looked at it and went, "You kind of need an Australian voice on this, guys."
I'm not sure I believe that about the title, but I will buy that the content was probably pretty lacking.
Okay, that's what I was. That's what I was told, and so he sort of gave it and gave that sort of a localized spin to it. I'm not sure whether or not that happened with the other content books. As I said, I am an Australian, so to me it read like it read as if someone who lived here knew what they were talking about. So I would assume that they did something similar with each of the other sort of regionalized splat books.
I don't know. I would have to check, but typically that's what White Wolf tries to do. Is if we get someone writing a book, we try to get someone who actually knows what they're talking about. We haven't always had success stories with that in the past.
World of Darkness Gypsies.
No comment.
Oh, look, no. I mean, that one, that is sort of the stick, that gets used to bait you guys with, but you guys certainly tried, and I mean, look, even with World of Darkness Second Ed, that's got a really nice Australia section written by Richard Watts, written by a local Melbourne guy. And so I know, yeah, you've had your successes and failures, but I would argue that the successes really do outweigh the failures. So Rage Across Australia and Gypsies notwithstanding, you guys put in the effort where it needed to be, and there are some much worse examples floating out there. Trust me.
This is true. I've read some pretty awful things about Canada in some RPG source books.
Mm-hmm.
We skipped talking about Trinity Battleground, which is an interesting footnote in White Wolf history. Trinity Battleground was a miniatures game set in the Trinity Universe. It is, I believe, White Wolf's only miniatures game, and it used sort of a miniatures adaptation of the Storyteller rule set. So people would have 5 stats, which are your strength, dexterity, and stamina, and then just sort of mental and social. So the mental and social categories just sort of got collapsed. So it would be possible for you to take your character from the Trinity RPG, convert them into battleground statistics to play your miniatures, and vice versa.
Well, that's pretty cool to know about. I don't think... Did they ever release all that much beyond just the basic box set for Trinity Battleground?
It only was published for, I think, about 6 months. There were a few blister packs for miniatures released, featuring various Legionnaires and various Aberrants to fight. And some extra expansions were planned, but ultimately never released. The Trinity Battleground Player's Guide was put up for free on the White Wolf website, sort of as a... just because they couldn't work on any of the things they planned on doing, so they put a bunch of them in there and just stuck them up for free.
Mm. Yeah, I think Battleground. I mean, I never got a chance to play it. I think Battleground was a noble attempt, but I don't quite think it found its audience. I think at the time everybody was, still sort of battling away with 40k, and I don't quite think that. Wow, I don't quite think that there was a hell of a lot of crossover at the time between sort of White Wolf gamers and tabletop war gamers.
Well, I think a lot of the issue at the time could have been because Trinity had just come out and a lot of people refused to buy it because they thought the storytelling system could only do World of Darkness. Because White Wolf had never done anything else before. People disparaged Trinity as being vampires in space. So if people didn't want to buy Trinity, they certainly wouldn't want to buy a miniatures game based on Trinity, which is just way out there.
That's unfortunate. I think it was also competing with 3rd edition 40k. I think that came out about the same time, so that would be it'd be a pretty tough thing to go up against.
Ooh, yeah.
All right, good stuff. Is there anything else you want to discuss regarding Trinity?
We can talk a little bit about system.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, because one of the things which I noted is it's, as I said, so it's revised storyteller system. So if you want to sort of fuse it with the idea of how can this be used in your World of Darkness games, system's exactly the same, and I would argue the power level is probably kind of similar to Vampire. It's maybe a little bit more powerful. So there's a whole bunch of things which can port over to classic World of Darkness with very very little tweaking. Like the powers, I think, go in a very very similar progression to disciplines. So if you really want to give certain powers to your vampires, you can do that. When we played it, we had a player character who really wanted to play a Tremere who had cold powers, who had sort of cryo powers. And we went, okay, so we pulled out Trinity, we found the rules for cryokinesis, and pretty much just sort of cut, paste, and worked really, really well.
Fair enough, that's good to know. Yeah, so it pretty much uses the same system, so yeah, Thaumaturgy is a very good example. Are there any powers that can be replaced? Maybe, like, I think Peter, you mentioned, like, there's this one power that was, like, way better than Potence, for example.
That's an Aberrant power. Mm-hmm. It's way better than Potence, but it's cranked up to 11. So we'll talk a little bit about that when we're talking about Aberrant. But the way mega attributes work. So if you're building your character, and rather than sort of giving him sort of cool powers, you just want him to be extremely strong or extremely tough or extremely fast, you give them mega attributes. So that's dots past 5, and I think the power scale goes to something like, once you've got 6 or 7, I think you're throwing tanks and battleships and that sort of thing. Isn't that right, Ian?
Close enough. So when you see the Hulk, for example, throwing a tank, he's probably using mega strength, or Superman lifting up an entire airplane or a building. That's an application of mega strength. So you can have a mega speed application of mega dexterity. Pretty much all the standard attributes have mega equivalents and various offshoots of that.
So I think if you wanted to use it, I think at the time before White Wolf had published the Gehenna books, where they had, the Antediluvians rock up, here's your 10 dots, or if you wanted to maybe use the alternate rules for when Elders and Methuselah show up, you could probably port over some of Aberrant's mega attributes. In the end, you'd end up rolling probably something in the realm of, maybe 15 to 25 dice. So yeah, the end result will still be the same. PCs go up against these guys; they're a fine red mist.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
Good stuff. So let's talk about Aberrant. What exactly is the setting like at this point?
It tries to take a look at what would the world actually look like if all of these people with superpowers suddenly showed up. So there are, for example, there's the XWF, the Extreme Warfare Federation. It's a wrestling federation specifically for Novas, because normal people beating the crap out of each other doesn't interest anyone anymore. The E! Entertainment channel has its own spin-off called N, which is specifically for Nova-related news. People with mega charisma become popular pop singers. So the idea that anyone with superpowers becomes either a hero or a villain, that's just not true. People just do all sorts of crap with their abilities. And obviously the reaction isn't necessarily all that great either. There are various factions of people who think that Novas are all demons and they should all die, or those that revere them as gods, so they must be worshipped, that sort of thing. And there are your factions of Novas who more or less believe the same thing, with one of the core groups is Project Utopia, which they're sort of the closest thing the setting has to an X-Men or a Justice League. But even the leader of them, he more gears his appearances based on how favorable it will look to the press more than what's actually good. So even then, it's not exactly black and white. There are shades of gray.
Yeah, you've got. I suppose there's a little bit of an equivalent with. There's a little bit of an equivalent going on with some of the stuff which was going on in the Marvel Universe. So you sort of got your project, so you sort of got your Project Utopia, who are, we've got these powers, we're going to use them for the greater good. And then on the flip coin of that, you've got the Terrigen, who I suppose are sort of, if you say to a layman, they're a little bit like the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. They've sort of got this belief that we've evolved, we're beyond humanity, and we should almost be a law unto ourselves, and humans should more or less stay out of our way. And a lot of, I suppose, the default tension you get in the game is when Project Utopia and the Terrigen sort of butt heads.
You guys kind of discussed the socio-political differences that occur in the Trinity setting. So how are things different with nations and that sort of thing in Aberrant?
Well, Aberrant it was released in 1999, but it was set in 2008. So we're already past the Aberrant setting. Mm-hmm. Although at the time it was supposed to be 10 years in the future.
Yeah.
So there isn't a lot of difference in what's going on. It's more like the United States is still the United States, Europe is still Europe, There are a few minor differences, mostly.
I think Castro's out of power, which still hasn't happened yet.
I think so. Aberrant did successfully predict that the new pope would be named Benedict.
Oh yeah.
Nice.
But by and large, society is the same. It's just a few differences introduced due to novas. So, for example, some super intelligent novas have they're finally starting to get fusion running. There are flying cars that have started to be introduced to police forces. Just a few minor things like that.
Mm. So yeah, one of the things you have is you've got a bunch of novas who they've got mega intelligence, and they're potentially sort of producing their own sort of super devices. And so so Project Utopia's sort of main role, or one of its main roles, is to try and keep a control on the various different technological devices which are popping up into sort of the mainstream. So all of a sudden you've got weaponry system which nobody else can match. So Project Utopia has spent a lot of time going, right, clamp down on that, and that's
When did novas start to appear exactly?
Within this context of the setting, novas started to appear in 1998 during what's called the Galatea explosion. There was a space station which exploded, and then everyone started manifesting these abilities. So the general consensus was there was some sort of experiment they must have been running, and radiation started blanketing the Earth, making people pop up with these weird powers. In actuality, spoilers for anyone who hasn't read this 15-year-old game, the leader of the Terrigen, a very powerful Nova who has been around since the Adventure era, he started blanketing the Earth in quantum energies himself, and it's that which has caused the novas. In fact, one of the first novas to erupt happened to be on the space station, and it's his eruption which caused the station to explode.
Ah, interesting. So anything else you guys want to discuss about Aberrant? Maybe some anecdotes from your own adventures in the setting or anything like that?
What should I say? The thing, Aberrant in its sort of current published form, it's very, very easy to break it. If you have a power gamer who knows exactly what he's doing as a starting character, he can make something that's pretty much unkillable. So you could argue that's the game's selling point, or that's the game's flaw.
There is a disparity in power, but
oh god, yeah.
But just like comics, which we're trying to emulate, you've got your Superman on one end of the scale, or Galactus, and you've got Spider-Man on the other end of the scale. So we do want to allow for all of those possibilities to be played together, but the books as they exist don't give a lot of support for how to handle that. So moving forward,
entirely up to the GM, yeah.
Yeah, moving forward, I want to have a lot more support for how to do that, rather than just saying you can't do it. Everyone has to be the same level, because to be honest, that's not fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, gotcha. No, that's a very good point. It's definitely something that White Wolf has run into with other games, I think, particularly Exalted. But that means you definitely have a lot of people at your disposal that have experience with that sort of thing and that kind of balance. So it's good to know. Cool. So I guess we'll move on over to Adventure, which Peter, you mentioned you don't have too much experience with, but maybe Ian can give us a bit of insight into that game.
Oh, what would you like to know?
A little bit about the setting, I guess. There's only one book, correct?
Yes, Adventure only received one book. At that point, the Trinity and Aberrant were both being cancelled. So Adventure almost wasn't going to get made, but it was Rich's baby. So he ran into, I forget whose office it was, but it might have been Steve Wick, and basically ran into his office and said, "We're making this game." And he said, "Okay." So got one book, but it's a very complete book. Unlike a lot of games, the core book feels like a good introduction, and you can play a full game with it, but you sort of want to pick up everything else. Adventure feels like a complete book. The sort of general idea is just sort of to emulate pulp. Z-rays, which have blanketed Earth, have caused a lot of weird stuff to pop up. It's sort of like manipulating probability in weird ways. So, for example, the lonely castle in the Carpathian Mountains, where nothing actually is, suddenly Z-rays go by, and as a result, there is now a vampire that has been living there for centuries. So yesterday there was no vampire, now he's been living there for centuries. So you could do, he's not really a vampire, because within the context of the setting there are no supernatural powers, but for all intents and purposes, he's a vampire. So you could do something like the Mummy movie with Brendan Fraser. You could totally do that with Adventure. The swamps of Louisiana have been rumored to have dinosaur sightings. There is a hollow earth with people that live there, full of crystals imbued with Z-ray energy. It's a great setting. There's a lot of fun to be had.
That's cool.
Zeppelins.
Does all that stuff disappear by the time you get to Aberrant?
Yes.
Oh.
As the Z-rays sort of stabilize and dissipate, all of the weirdness sort of settles down by about World War II.
That's pretty cool. Interesting. Well, is that all we have to discuss about Adventure? I mean, it seems like it's only one book, so there can't be too many secrets that can be revealed on Darker Days Radio. But if that's it, I think we can move on to just kind of discussing what we might potentially see with Trinity Continuum.
Sure. I can't reveal a lot yet, both because it's very, very early, so anything I promise could change a week from now. Also, I want to keep stuff, a little stuff behind just to keep everyone, nicely excited and surprised when the time comes.
Yeah. Yeah, Ian, this isn't going to be like over the summer when you popped into a hangout and then everyone just started grilling you for information.
No, I know. Let's see, some things I'd like to do. These sort of themes of the three game lines. For Trinity, it was unity. For Aberrant, it was sacrifice. And for Adventure, it was hope. I'd like to sort of dig down and reinforce those themes where they might not have been too evident originally. So that's sort of concrete and vague. If like you guys in the future who are looking back at this, you'll see what I'm talking about once the book comes out.
Okay, cool. Well, one of the questions I sort of I wanted to ask, and this may get a we don't know yet. Okay. But so one of the things that does kind of date Trinity a little bit is it's very much in line with how White Wolf used to make games, in that it's got a great big massive meta plot, and it's constantly evolving, and I think it's probably, if it's just as, or it was just as, if not more, meta plot driven than the original World of Darkness. So, and now you've got New World of Darkness, where it's more of a toolbox approach, where you can sort of drop elements in, and the meta plot kind of isn't there, and it's only now with God Machine and with Blood and Smoke that you're looking to sort of add in metaplot elements. Are we going to see something similar to that with this new iteration of Trinity?
What we're sort of thinking of doing, and again this could change, is sort of no metaplot within a given line. So the new Aeon, which is the same as Trinity before, Aeon, once you get Aeon will have no metaplot. But in the grander scheme of things, you can look at Aeon as a potential future for the Aberrant setting. It doesn't have to be, but by default, it is. So the timeline will not advance in Trinity. Okay. But yeah, you get the idea.
Okay. Can you talk at all about what the plan is in terms of releases? Are you going to start with a Trinity book and then later on do an Aberrant book and then an adventure book, or?
That's our plan. We're going to follow the original release order for the three main game lines. But one thing I spoiled the other day on the Onyx Path website is we're not limiting ourselves to those 3 game lines. Those will be the sort of the focal points. The equivalent of sort of Vampire, Werewolf, and Mage are the main game lines for the World of Darkness, but we're also going to have these additional sort of points of interest along the continuum, which makes up the greater setting. So if we want to do Victorian Age, see what adventurers would look like then, or if we want to look at, I don't know, the Edwardian era, or we want to look further into the future, or if we want to look at World War II adventurers, all of these are options for us. So
Right.
we can have also, like, we're not going to limit ourselves to just looking through like tiny 3 little slits. We're going to have the whole of time open to us, which is very exciting.
Yeah. And I know that Rich Thomas mentioned a little bit that he really wants to kind of push the digital angle, like these, because he said that the Trinity books themselves are sort of organized in the setting sections are organized as like in-world documents, and you've got sort of little pop-up hologram pictures and whatnot. And Rich said that he wanted to kind of try and get that going on a digital product. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, it's something we'd like to do, but in a technical sense, we need to find the people who are able to do it. So just because we want to do something doesn't mean it's going to happen.
That's true. I mean, I think an argument can be made that the Trinity line's original downfall was that the production design was so lavish. I think you've got, half full color sections, half black and white. Is that kind of more or less what happened to Trinity?
Nope.
Oh, sorry. All right, never mind.
Trinity and Aberrant were both canceled due to low sales, but this is low sales compared to the World of Darkness.
Fair enough.
Essentially, if the Trinity Universe had been getting the same sales and it was almost any other company, it would have been seen as a smashing success. So that's not something I'm personally too worried about. I've been getting a lot of positive feedback of people excited about this. We'd like to do, like, with the PDF and print-on-demand releases, we don't need to invest more, like, as much into doing larger print runs with full color and everything. So it gives us a lot more freedom in what we're able to do. So we'd like to, for example, just off the top of my head, in Trinity, maybe have some embedded videos in PDFs, or have, like, in advertisements off at the side, we could have those animated or whatever. That might make for a massive download. It might not be feasible, but it's cool to think about.
Yeah, maybe something like, the scrolling news bar that you kind of get on, 24-hour news channel or something.
Right, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. Well, it's very good to hear about the Trinity Continuum. Wish you plenty of luck with that, Ian. It's definitely a huge task for you to be undertaking.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It's a little daunting, Ian, but I'm excited.
So I suppose the final question, Ian, would be, when are we likely to see a book tentatively?
Without pinning anything down too much, I would say 2014. So not this year, but next.
Okay.
All right, guys. So I always like to ask one question of whoever is on the show for the first time. So, Ian, if you could be a household appliance, which would you be and why?
This isn't my first time on the show.
Well, okay, this is the first time you're here as a guest, and I'm asking you this question.
All right, household appliance. Let's see. Look around me for a minute here, figure something out. TV.
Okay, that's something.
A storytelling device.
It is. It's a little archaic. I think TVs are going to be dead in a couple years as well.
Well, maybe.
Well, there's really no difference between a TV and a computer monitor. So
Exactly.
There you go.
Yep, good stuff. And Peter, if you could be a household appliance, which would you be and why?
Oh God, I thought about this one. I would probably be an alarm clock because I'm annoying but useful.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a really good one. Nice. So Ian, if people want to follow what you're doing, maybe bother you about Trinity and all the different game lines, where can they find you?
Well, I run the Onyx Path Twitter account. I run the Onyx Path Facebook account. I run the Onyx Path Google+. I run the Onyx Path website. If you'd like to contact me more personally, I'm on Twitter as Von Aether, VONAETHER.
Very good. And Peter, how about yourself?
If you really want to contact me, I'm quite active on the Darker Days community. So jump on in there and have a chat with me.
Awesome. Yep. And if you want to get in touch with Darker Days, send us an email at darkerdaysradio@gmail.com. Maybe check out our Facebook, facebook.com/darkerdaysradio. And of course, the G Plus community, which is just Darker Days Radio. I think that's about it. I don't think I have any other closing remarks. So with that, I'd like to thank both you, Ian, and Peter as well for coming on the show and
Thank you for having me.
talking about Trinity for this special birthday episode.
Na, 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 na.
All right, and with that, everyone, have a good night. Okay, guys. Can I bother you guys about this? Ian, when you were talking about the Trinity setting, you were talking about how the Federated States of America are kind of like cyberpunky. Could you give me some more details on that? I'm looking for a setting for the World of Darkness Bleeding Edge. I'm thinking about running a game with that. So
Okay.
You've pretty much got it.
Oh yeah, nice.
We've done that a couple of times. We've taken the Federated States of America and dropped them into the World of Darkness, 50 to 100 years later, and it works fine.
There are massive arcologies running up and down the East Coast, where the vast majority of the U.S. or the FSA population is. But Canada, okay, at the end of the Aberrant War,
All right.
one Aberrant blew himself up in the middle of the grain belt. So a lot of the U.S. production of food was gone. So the military took over because there was a massive famine situation, and they sort of annexed Canada. So Canada, the U.S., and parts of Mexico were all considered part of the Federated States of America, run by the military.
USA. USA. And that's terrible.
It's, you can America bash, but I mean, I like to think that the countries and the regions in Trinity which didn't sort of fare so well as others were basically the ones that got screwed up the most during the Aberrant War, and sort of just completely torn apart by raging Aberrants.
Right. For example, Florida got sunk.
Nice.
It's only just starting to be recovered now. Anyway, so up and down the coast you have massive arcologies, which is you know what an arcology is.
Yeah, I do.
So there's your sort of Shadowrun-esque setting there, and a lot of the areas in between are more like dirty rebel outposts. People just scrounging for whatever they can find on the ground and trying to put something together functional out of that. So it's almost Mad Maxy sort of situation. Almost as soon as you leave the arcologies, because the security is pretty tight. Only authorized people get to go inside, sort of thing.
Awesome. Yep. All right. I'm sold.
It's
Actually, I know
we've done it a couple of times, and it's perfect. It slots right in there.
Actually, if you have a moment, I probably have some pictures I can load up from one of the books.
I could hold them up in front of the camera. I've got my copy of America Offline just right there. Hang on.
Oh, America Offline's the source book. I've seen a copy of that.
Yeah,
Actually.
it has the greatest title ever.
Yeah,
I love that title.
I didn't actually find a copy of a Trinity source book or Aberrant source book until like a couple years back, like 2 summers ago. First time I ever saw one.
That was something that we discovered here in Australia. We didn't know if it was just the fact that we're Australia, but certain Trinity books were really, really hard to come by. It was only really sort of in the early 2000s that eBay really kicked off, that we started being able to sort of pick up everything we were after.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yeah.
That's odd. I've never really had a problem. Suckers.
No, it's just something. It's something interesting. But I did actually find a shop that has a whole bunch of the books, so maybe I'll go check that out.
Yeah, go for it, man.
Yeah.
We talked about that a little bit on the communities that back in the day. So we're talking 99 through to probably 2004. Role-playing game books you just could not get. You just could not get them cheaply. You could, if you take the American cover price and double or triple it.
Yeah, I know.
And that's
I know about you guys and your experience with Games Workshop as well, which is.
Oh god, yes, the Games Workshop. It's the dear old Games Workshop. It was something that I never quite got with Games Workshop, where it's a hobby design. It's a sort of teenager's hobby, but you need an adult's resources. Because I remember thinking, I want to get myself a 2,000 point army, and that will be about $700. And for 15-year-olds, yeah, that didn't quite work out.
No, definitely not. Yeah, Ian, I'm looking at this picture, and
this is a blight research facility. The blight is what's left of the grain belt.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. I'm just sort of flipping through images here.
So these are all production. These are all the production images that you've got access to, is it?
Some of them, yeah.
Oh god, yeah, I would love all this sort of stuff. Yeah.
All right, here's an arcology.
I'm not digging those 3D images.
That's product of its time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That is pretty cool looking arcology, actually. Interesting.
If you look very, very closely at the advertisements visible through the windows, you can see AT&T and Coca-Cola. A few others in there. Let's see.
And Will Wheaton's talking to you. Holy crap.
No, that's just... He's got it's his Facebook feed.
I know.
I've got that popping up on Twitter.
Will Wheaton tagged me once in a G Plus post. I almost fell out of my chair.
Oh, awesome.
Nah, Will Wheaton's cool. I met him. Well, sort of. I stood in line for 90 minutes, got him to sign something, said, "You're really cool," and then was, shoved aside. But nah. You actually got a better fan interaction with Will Wheaton than pretty much anyone, didn't you, Ian?
Yes, I did. Have you heard this story, Mike?
I have not. What is it?
Okay. Have you heard of Sparks McGee?
Nope.
Okay. About 10 years ago-ish, someone sent an email to Will Wheaton saying, you know what could have made Wesley Crusher popular is if you gave him a cool name like Sparks McGee, you had him wear like a cowboy hat and a muscle shirt, and he would drive around in his Trans Am on the Enterprise, and he'd be so cool, and people would, you'd have to have the other characters constantly asking, like, number one, where the devil is Sparks McGee? And he'd say, probably driving around in his muscle car, sir. And they'd all laugh, ha ha ha, and Worf would say something about honor.
Yeah.
So he posted that on his blog 10 years ago, promptly forgot about it. I mentioned it to him on a Reddit post in March last year. And he was like, oh my god, I completely forgot about this. This is the best thing ever. He reposted it to his blog, he posted it to Twitter, he posted it everywhere. Everything was all about Sparks McGee. A Sparks McGee Tumblr has popped up. Like, he recently made a post that said Sparks McGee is the second best thing that ever happened to me after his wedding. Which is... So I'm sort of responsible for that. So anyway, he was at Polaris, a sci-fi convention in Toronto in July, and I walked in, and his handler introduced us, like, Will, this is Ian. And I said, hi, Will, I'm Ian, you might remember me as the guy who reintroduced you to Sparks McGee, and he jumped up, Ian Watson? Like, Yeah. Like, oh my god! And then he jumped up and do you have a cell phone? We've got to get a picture and post it on Reddit. Like, okay. Like, looking around all these signs saying absolutely no photos, because like there was a photo session later you had to pay $40 for. His handler was like, are you sure? And he's like, yeah, it's cool, I know him.
Nice.
So I've got this photo of us like leaning together, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I mean,
We're bros.
That's kind of what you want. I've been to the local convention scene a couple of times, and those really polished sort of high school prom photos that you get with them kind of creep me out a little bit. I mean, if I'd want a photo with them, it would be the sort of, on the cell phone hanging with friends kind of photo.